All right, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, supporters and speakers. Thank you for coming out today. My name is Jared Moffett. I'm the director of Regulate Rhode Island. We are a coalition of citizens and organizations working to end marijuana prohibition and create a system to regulate and tax the sales of marijuana to adults. So we're here today joined by leaders of the Republican, Democratic, and soon the Libertarian Party chairperson will be here with us. And we called this press conference to really demonstrate that from any political perspective, there are good reasons to support ending marijuana prohibition and creating a system to regulate marijuana. Essentially, we want to see this because right now our policy is not working, and we'd like to see something that is going to promote personal liberty, but also public safety and public health. So you'll hear some of the reasons why, from different political perspectives, why this is a good move forward. So our first speaker today is going to be Representative Edith Agello. She is the sponsor of House Bill 7506, which is the Marijuana Regulation, Control, and Taxation Act, which would end marijuana prohibition effectively in Rhode Island. So with that, I'm going to let her take over and introduce some other speakers. Thank you, Representative Agello.
First, I want to thank Regulate Rhode Island for continuing to move this issue forward, bring us together to talk about it more and more. This is, I think, the third press conference I've done on this legislative session, and it's special for another reason. Dr. Dan Harrop and I have run against each other for the House District 3 and now House District 1 seat in the Rhode Island House of Representatives several times. There's been no acrimony. We've always been polite and respectful to each other, and that's especially good, and it allows us to come together on something. Dr. Harrop ran against me, first as a Libertarian and then as a Republican. I think it's his Libertarian tendencies, perhaps his Libertarian Republican tendencies or philosophy regarding government and government control over our personal choices. But he and I have come around together from my progressive or liberal bent and his libertarian bent to be together in support of regulating, taxing, and legalizing marijuana in the state of Rhode Island. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Dan Harrop.
Thank you, Representative. As the representative has mentioned, we've actually run against each other on a number of occasions, what was District 3 and is now District 1. But I am very happy to be here today supporting Representative Agello's bill in the General Assembly and to support Regulate Rhode Island. I think ending marijuana prohibition is totally consistent with conservative principles and libertarian principles. It's certainly a personal liberty issue, and the number of people trapped in the criminal justice system simply for distributing small amounts of marijuana is appalling. I would much rather have licensed businesses control the production and sale of marijuana with oversights like those for tobacco and alcohol than continue keeping it in the shadows. I am a physician by profession, and I see no particular medical reasons to prohibit marijuana. I see no particular reasons why these laws should stay on the books, and I look forward to the day when we can eliminate these laws and have a more progressive policy towards marijuana use in this state. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harrop. I'd now like to welcome Christina Fox, who is the co-founder and president emeritus of the Young Democrats of Rhode Island.
Hi, good afternoon. I will keep my remarks brief. So my name is Christina Fox. I am the co-founder of the newly reconstituted chapter of the Young Democrats of Rhode Island and the president emeritus. And I am here to say that the Young Democrats of Rhode Island are proud members of Regulate Rhode Island, and we support ending marijuana prohibition and subsequently regulating and taxing the sale of marijuana. Now, when our board of directors unanimously voted to join the coalition, it was for one reason. This is an issue that affects young people enormously. excuse me, to echo my Republican counterparts, the amount of folks, in particular young folks, even more in particular young folks of color, who are arrested and incarcerated over the possession of small amounts of marijuana is beyond alarming. It's horrifying. We are sending the best and brightest of our country, young folks like me, to jail where their potential will potentially never be realized, and they can do no good in contributing back to our society, to our communities. So we urge the General Assembly to please pass Representative Agello's bill out of committee and then onto the floor and out onto the books of our state law. This would be the best direction for our state to go in and the best effect for our communities, and ultimately the best. This is the best way forward to help Rhode Island's young people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. I now want to welcome Michael Rollins, who is the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Rhode Island, and that'll be the third party that you've heard represented here.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Rollins, and I am the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Rhode Island. For those of you who are not familiar with us, our core libertarian ideal is the non-aggression principle. This is the ideal that, to the maximum extent possible, all human relationships should be totally voluntary and mutually consensual. My reason for being here this afternoon is to explain how, from a libertarian perspective, the so-called war on drugs, particularly the war against the marijuana plant, represents a major violation of the non-aggression principle and thus a major violation of our most basic human rights. Please all be kind enough to think very carefully about exactly how the so-called war on drugs is fought. Heavily armed people wearing government-issued uniforms frequently engage in what are called no-knock raids, during which they deliberately force their way into homes or businesses at all hours of the day or night, while deliberately not giving the occupants of those homes or businesses any real time to fully understand what is happening. All too often, these raids are accompanied by the use of flashbang grenades to deliberately make the situation more chaotic, and the deliberate shooting of any dog or dogs that may happen to be on the premises. If an average person or group of people were to carry out this kind of raid, it would be called a home invasion and greatly treated as being the extremely serious crime that it is. Think about how deadly dangerous these no-knock raids are for all of the people involved. Know that many totally innocent people have died and continue to die or be seriously injured in these raids. Are these home invasions, which is what they must rightly be called, really what all of us want to have done in our names to those who may choose to grow a plant or make use of that plant for otherwise peaceful purposes? Thank you.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Are any of these raids happening in Rhode Island?
I've heard stories off and on. You can go online as easily as I can and look for them.
Flashbang grenades, shooting dogs, where's this happening?
All over the country.
Here in Rhode Island?
I'm not familiar with specific instances in Rhode Island in the recent past, but yes.
What's the problem?
The problem is that people are using violence to do violence, to make people not use a plant for recreational or medicinal purposes that's otherwise mostly harmless, quite honestly.
We have a couple more speakers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So quickly, we have a couple more folks that are going to share comments. I'm happy to welcome Patricia Smith, who is an active member of the Rhode Island Progressive Democrats, and she is the chairwoman of the Social and Economic Justice Committee of the Rhode Island Progressive Democrats. So welcome, Pat Smith here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am here speaking mostly in my role as an educator who has taught for almost too many years to count, 40 years in Rhode Island Public Schools, and then more recently at one of the universities in Rhode Island. I also want to say that I have 13 grandchildren, so I am extremely invested in the young people of today. through my own efforts and through my future. I have observed a few things that I think are really seriously wrong with the approach that we've taken in trying to keep young people and everyone away from recreational marijuana. The first one is the use of scare tactics. You hear people tell absolutely outlandish stories about what happens to people who use marijuana. Any young person who's living in today's world know that those stories are not true, have a million friends that have had completely different experiences, and so it destroys our credibility as adults. And when we do go to say something that's really serious and important and that they need to listen to, they've already dismissed us because we've told them things that absolutely aren't true. Any law that can't be enforced is not a good law because it basically undermines respect for the law and authority of the law and puts young people outside the law from a fairly early age. A second thing that I would talk about is the safety. When you have something that's illegal, there's no one checking on the quality. So, for example, if you are underage but buy a beer, you are still getting, in fact, a beer. But if you're underage and you're buying from some criminal drug dealer on the street, you have absolutely no idea what you're getting. And that's scary because oftentimes it's laced with things that really would be dangerous to young people. So I think that we need to really think it's better off regulated, controlled, sold on the open market with legislation guiding it. And a third thing is the use of money. A lot of people talk as though the desire to tax marijuana is just we're going to sell out our young people so that we can get more money coming into the state coffers. We do tax tobacco, we do tax alcohol. But when you think of what is the better, the state getting the money from selling marijuana legally, safe marijuana, and using that money for after-school programs, for school loans, to help students in the way that they're living their lives. Far better way of getting them away from being addicted to any kind of drug at all is to give them alternatives. Or, conversely, keep it illegal and keep the money in the hands of criminals, drug cartels, violent gangs on the streets. Doesn't make a lot of sense when you really think about it. And finally, just in terms of the equity, and we've touched on the fact that we certainly know that minorities are targeted more. We certainly know that they end up with ridiculous jail sentences. But there are also things, even for your average student, for example, if you are in college and have a federal loan and you are caught with marijuana, you lose your federal loan and you can never apply for it again. If, on the other hand, you come from a wealthy family and don't need a federal loan, you may get a slap on the hand. Your parents may hire a good lawyer. You may get disruptive behavior, but you're not losing your college loan for 4 years. So there's an equity issue. So I would say our credibility, our safety, our equity, and the use of tax money to benefit young people rather than criminals. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Pat. All right, our last speaker is Mr. Richard Ford. He is the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus, so he's here with us today.
Thank you, Jared. As you said, I'm the director of the Republican Liberty Caucus of Rhode Island, and we are against the prohibition of marijuana. We're against putting kids in jail, putting people in jail for the use of a plant. Although this bill can be a lot better, it's a step in the right direction, and we fully support ending the prohibition of marijuana. And I mean, the economic benefits are obvious. I mean, we could open mills for hemp. There's a whole list of economic benefits of marijuana, and decrease the populations in prisons, get less people going back for petty crimes, and as Mike said, the drug war is seriously offensive. Although we're not talking about heavy drugs right now, hard drugs or anything like that, it's still a step in that direction too. And we're completely against the war on drugs. And that's it.
Great.
Ford, where are you from?
I'm from Newport, Rhode Island.
Newport. Can you describe the...
Can I just ask you one question?
Yeah.
You're calling out all of us libertarians and people on the right. When the left talks, you don't say anything.
Let's just ask him.
But it's cool.
He's just a reporter.
Question
I was going to ask you, how can
Yes.
this be made better, the way you say it?
How can the bill be made better?
Yeah.
As a Liberty person, I think it's nobody's business what's going on in people's homes, and regulating the amount of plants that they're allowed to have in their homes, I'm not a fan of.
Thanks.
Can you just describe your group a little? Like, what are you about? What's it about?
We're the Liberty wing of the Republican Party, what Ron Paul started. You know, ending the war on drugs, abolishing the Federal Reserve.
Okay.
Thanks for sure.
Okay.
Great. Are there any other questions? Oh.
Yeah, Repicello, we've heard famously this year that nothing's going to pass that isn't about jobs in the economy. How is this jobs in the economy?
That's an easy one. Thank you. This would establish, with the Department of Regulation, a way for and a requirement that businesses be licensed to sell marijuana. That would provide jobs in that area, in the retail end. Also, businesses would apply for licenses to grow and process marijuana. More jobs, more of a boost to the economy. And there is a third piece in there that is regarding the testing of marijuana for purity, to make sure it's clean and doesn't have pesticides or something like that in it. More jobs for the economy. Taking the money that is in marijuana now out of the underground and bringing it back to legitimate businesses and legitimate jobs.
And if I may just add really quickly, we have seen, a lot of positive results from Colorado so far. So we've seen $12.6 million in tax revenue from January through March from legal marijuana sales. That includes recreational and medical. And the industry experts there estimate that there are between 7,500 and 10,000 marijuana-related jobs in the state. So this is absolutely something that is going to improve Rhode Island's economy, help us fill in those budget gaps. Any other questions?
Both you and Repicello, any closer to getting any hearing or any passage on any of this?
We're waiting for the Senate hearing, the companion bill in the Senate for that hearing to be scheduled. So we're awaiting that. There's still discussion about moving the bill forward, and so we'll wait and see. Yeah.
What do the discussions center around right now, and would you be open to tweaks to the bill that would, perhaps ease its way out of committee?
I would certainly be open to tweaks, adjustments in whatever way towards moving the issue forward. Regulating, licensing the sale, taxing it, providing some of the money towards rehabilitation, prevention education, that sort of thing for our youth and adults. We badly need some more money for opioid treatment and prevention. Thank you.
Jared, just encapsulate, if you would, what it means to bring people of this broad political spectrum together. What does it mean? What do you hope it will translate?
So the meaning of this is to show that from whatever political perspective you approach this issue, there are good reasons to support ending marijuana prohibition. If you're a Republican concerned about the economy, then this is something that's going to create jobs and help us fill in those budget gaps. If you're concerned about personal liberty, or if you're a libertarian, then this is something that right now we're impinging on people's personal liberty. If you're someone, a progressive or a Democrat who cares about social justice and the harm that incarcerating young people and incarcerating parents, for instance, is having on our society, this is something that you can get behind. So we called this press conference essentially to show that wherever political philosophy you're approaching this issue from, there are good reasons to support this reform.